Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So it's the wildcard video for Game Week 22, and even if you're not wildcarding, hopefully it helps you out with your free transfer thoughts moving forward. Me personally, I've got 4 free transfers saved up, and I'm genuinely thinking of getting as close to this team as possible for the next few game weeks. I do make all my own charts myself, so if you can subscribe, support the channel, I would really appreciate it as I try and close in on 1,000 subscribers. Let's get into it. So to put it into context, we need to look at certain teams to target. So these are the teams with the best fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. We've got Chelsea, Palace, Sunderland, West Ham, Spurs, Liverpool, and Aston Villa. And there are teams like West Ham in this list that no matter how good their fixtures are, you probably shouldn't go anywhere near them. But there are going to be some players from certain teams on this list that will help us attack the fixtures. Because if you are wildcarding, you need to consider the medium to long term, not just the next couple of game weeks. So in goal, we're going to start with David Raya. Now, I know that he's had quite a bit of not criticism recently, but I think it's something that we do need to be aware of. That is he the best value for money? I think you get what you pay for. Arsenal's fixtures look great from a defensive point of view. Forest, Man United, Leeds, Sunderland at home, Brentford and Spurs. I think they're all clean sheet potential fixtures. And you could go cheaper and get a cheaper goalkeeper in, but then I just think you're going to get less clean sheets over the rest of the season. Because if you're using your wildcard right now, you don't want to be using free transfers on a goalkeeper that in a few game weeks, if you've got Verbruggen or a Kelleher and they're just not keeping the clean sheets, that you want to transfer out again. And also, David Raya is pretty much a cheap way into the Arsenal defence right now. When we take a look at the first chart, we're going to look at goalkeepers with clean sheets versus expected goals conceded in the last 6 game weeks. And these are goalkeepers who have played 5 or 6 games during that time span. And we can see David Raya here, whilst he's just got 2 clean sheets, I think compared to other goalkeepers, he's doing pretty well. The issue might be is that there's low save amounts. He's not making very many saves. So the bigger the circles on this chart, the more saves they've made in the last 6 game weeks. But that tells me that the opposition aren't getting a load of shots off. And that's something that we want for clean sheets. You know, a goalkeeper might be making a load of saves. Maybe someone like a Sanchez down here, who probably would be my second choice goalkeeper given the Chelsea's good fixtures. But that means the opposition are getting more shots, and therefore clean sheets are just less sustainable over a longer period of time. Into defence, and I've gone a little bit risky here. You might think, why have you got Munoz in this team? But again, if we're wildcarding right now, you need to be saving transfers over the next few game weeks. So you don't want to wildcard and then say, right, I'm going to get Munoz in 2 game weeks. If you're going to want him in when he's back, which he is scheduled to come back in game week 22, and I think he's a great option. I think you get him in now. The defence on the bench with Mukiele and Anderson is absolutely fine to rotate in. You play Mukiele in the home games for Sunderland, and then you can play Anderson in pretty much any game, and he'll do a good job at getting you DEFCON. Now, I understand that Reece James is also in this team, and it is a pretty risky defence in terms of injury. But Reece James, over the course of the season, has shown that he can play consistently. Again, with Chelsea's new manager, it's unclear on where he's going to play, whether it's in midfield or right back. I would consider him to sort of play a bit between, and therefore I think he does still have some reasonably good defensive contribution points. When we take a look at the chart for the season, so really I wanted to look at players like Gabriel Munoz, they're not going to show very well in the last 6 game weeks. So I wanted to look at across the season. We can see expected goals conceded versus goals conceded. Essentially, this shows the line of best fit. Anyone who is below the line is overperforming their defensive data. They're conceding less goals than they should be. Anyone who's over the line is conceding more goals than they should be over the course of the season. So here we can see the 3 defenders that we've talked about. Gabriel, Munoz, and Reece James, they're all doing pretty well in terms of expected goals conceded. Now, of course, they've played fewer games than some other players, but everyone on this chart has played at least 12 games so far. And I think we do know that when Gabriel plays for Arsenal, he is pretty much a lock in your FPL teams. So he almost goes without saying. And I think Munoz and James just offer such good upside from an attacking point of view. And then we do balance that out with Anderson and Mukiele, who have played pretty much every game this season. The circles on this chart show defensive contributions per 90. So the fact that Mukiele and Anderson have pretty big circles next to their names shows that they get defensive contributions more often than not. And they offer just great rotations. So let's say you maybe don't think Reece James is going to play, or maybe he doesn't play one game. One of those players coming in off your bench is absolutely fine. I do think it's worth getting in Chelsea defender. So if you don't like Reece James, maybe you go for a Chalobah for a little bit cheaper. But Munoz is someone that personally I'm thinking of getting in my team as soon as he is fit. I'm not going to wildcard right now, so he is a planned free transfer. But if I was wildcarding, he would be in. So another defensive chart we're going to look at is the attacking side as well. And this puts into place really the Reece James, Munoz sort of area that I'm going for here because we're looking at expected goal involvements versus goal involvements. And essentially we can see that Gabriel, Reece James and Munoz are all doing really well for goal involvements for the season. So the argument of, well, they don't play very much can be countered by, well, if they're playing less, look at their attacking data in less time, whether that's through injuries or rotation or, something like that. And I think that just counters that argument and says, well, when they do play, they get really good attacking data. So if they do play more, that attacking data is going to continue. And I just think that gives really good upside for these defenders and just gives that balance of clean sheet potential with good fixtures and attacking output. Mukiele and Anderson, they're not especially great for attacking contributions. What I would say is that Anderson has been expected to be involved in 2 goal involvements so far this season, hasn't gotten any. He's underperforming his expected data. I would say he's probably, by that logic, got an attacking return incoming at some point in the future. I just think at 4.6 million, he's amazing value. And if you wanted just a cheaper defender that you could just put in at any point and kind of forget about, he's probably the one. So into midfield, and again, you might think a little bit risky. Bruno Fernandes is someone that if you are on a wild card, you probably do need to get in. On a free transfer, you might want to wait a couple of weeks just so he gets the Man City Arsenal games out of the way. But I think in game week 24, as long as he's not had an injury setback, everyone's going to be getting him in their teams. So if you think he's got a chance against those next 2 fixtures, I'd get him in now. I'd get ahead of the curve on a wild card. I think you just save yourself that free transfer later on because it's all well and good thinking, right, in 2 weeks, I'll get Bruno in. If I wild card now, I'll just wait 2 weeks. Your team will have injuries, suspensions, other things will like lack of form will crop up. And then all of a sudden it makes Bruno getting in your team a little bit more difficult. I think for me, the 2 Chelsea players, Enzo is pretty lock, pretty good lock in this team. If you're on a wild card, I think even on a free transfer, he's probably the best Chelsea player to get in right now. I think Pedro Neto, that does remain to be seen. And I am aware that we don't really know how much he's going to be playing under the new manager. Chelsea do have some good options in the attacking spaces. If Chelsea play Caicedo and Andre Santos as the 2 holding midfielders, and then Enzo pushes forward and Palmer goes to the right, that would affect Neto's minutes. But across the season, as we'll see in a second with the charts, Neto is a really good pick and has been really effective this season. If you didn't want him, there's a ton of other players that we can talk about and look at in the charts that you could get in instead. But I think for a budget 7-ish million midfielder, he's great. Tavernier and Saka are in this team. I think Saka is someone that is just ticking along with points. People criticizing him for being too expensive, but he's getting points in FPL, and that's ultimately what it's all about. And if you don't have anything else to spend the money on, then his price doesn't really matter. Tavernier is again someone now that Cliver is injured and Semenyo has gone, could have a more attacking role. It remains to be seen. And again, would you use a free transfer on him? Maybe not. But I think otherwise, on a wild card, you could totally value getting him in your team. So let's take a look at the first midfielder chart. And this is the last 6 game weeks for 4 or more games from these midfielders. And the line of best fit shows expected goal involvements versus goal involvements. So essentially, if you're under the line, you're underperforming your expected data, and therefore, with good fixtures, if you're getting the same chances, you're more likely to be scoring them in the next few weeks. Anyone who's over the line is overperforming their expected data, but if they still have good fixtures coming up, I don't see why that would be a problem in the medium term. So here we can see Enzo Fernandez, even in the last 6 game weeks, is really underperforming his expected goal involvements. I just think he's the best pick in terms of potential for the next few weeks. He's already in my team in FPL and has been in my team for a while. Even when he wasn't performing, I just didn't see a need to take him out. And he has repaid that with 2 goals in the last 3 weeks. Saka is one of the best performing midfielders for actual output in the last 6 weeks, just a little bit above Rice. And I do get it, like Rice is good value. I think for Saka, he will just keep ticking along. He's got 10 attacking returns in his last 12 games. And I think that's just good performance. I think that's what you want in points. A lot of times we get bored with the just ticking along of an attacking return every other game, and you look for the 17 pointers that Rice got recently. But nobody's getting 17 pointers every week. That's something that you just have to bear in mind. The rest of the midfield, so Tavernier and Neto, doing pretty well. On restricted minutes, you would say for Neto, sometimes he starts, sometimes he doesn't. He is performing quite well, and he's pretty much dead on this line of best fit, which would suggest if he keeps even getting the same amount of minutes, he should be getting 2 goal involvements every 6 game weeks, one in every 3 games. And that's good for a 7 million midfielder. You would take that and attack and return every 3 weeks. And Tavernier is slightly above that, someone who, again, it remains to be seen how his role goes moving forward. So when we take a look at for the season, so this is the same chart, so the same things we're looking for in the previous chart, expected goal involvements versus goal involvements, but for the season, because this takes into account these players for not only a longer period of time, which is what you want on a wild card, this is your last wild card of the season, but it also shows Bruno Fernandes. And here on the right hand side, we can see Saka, Enzo, and Bruno for the season are head and shoulders above everyone else for their expected data. And I think that just shows how strong a pick Bruno is, considering he's just missed a few games for injuries. Now, BPS stands for bonus point scores, and that's not your bonus points that you get at the end of the game. These are the points you get for the positive actions within a game that lead to your 1, 2, or 3 bonus points that you see players get at the end of a match. Therefore, when a higher BPS means that they're doing more positive things on the pitch, so when they get an attack in return, they're pretty much guaranteed those 1, 2, 3 bonus points. So again, Saka and Enzo are just good picks. I don't see a reason why they would stop doing that. They're pretty close to the line. And again, like we just said, Enzo Fernandez is someone that has just been underperforming his data all season, and I'm really interested to see how he'll do in these next few weeks. The other 2 midfielders are actually not too far behind. Again, Neto for the season is pretty close to that line to say that his performance will continue. And if he does get these minutes for Chelsea, he is just a high upside, low differential player that you could get in as just one of those players that you think, right, how do I gain rank in FPL? He's a little bit risky, but he's not one of the obvious picks. And I just think the data shows he is pretty solid. And Tavernier, again, is dead on that line and not too far away from the other players that you were looking to get in. You look at Gakpo and Foden's output. Well, Tavernier is not too far behind that for the season. So let's get into the strikers, and this is why we can afford a couple of premiums and an expensive defence, because I've got Krupi and Mane in the forward line, and I just think they're both really good picks on a wild card. This is my front line. I'm actually thinking of using free transfers to get them both in, because I think Haaland, Krupi, and Mane pretty much a set and forget. We've been looking at players chasing points up front, whether that's Mateta, Thiago, Ollie Watkins, Calvert-Lewin. You're kind of dotting around these players, using free transfers, chipping away your free transfers to get in players that, once you've taken a striker out, he scores goals. Once you get one in, he stops scoring goals. And that cycle seems to keep on coming for a lot of FPL managers. I think if you just reduce the down, say, right, I've got Mane from Wolves, Krupi from Bournemouth. They both look like they're going to play. Krupi's going to get more minutes now that Semenyo's gone and Kluivert's injured. It remains to be seen whether they replace Semenyo in the transfer market, but Krupi is just a great finisher. I think in 7 goals in limited minutes, that should be really encouraging to anyone who's looking at saving some money up front. And I think you just play these strikers, or you put Droopy and Mane on the bench, and you've got a really solid bench if you need it. And it's pretty much bench boost ready is this team. and that allows you to invest money elsewhere. So let's take a look at the forwards charts for the last 6 weeks. And ultimately, it's the same metrics we're looking for: goal involvements versus expected goal involvements. We can see that there are four forwards who are doing really well for expected goal involvements and actual output in the last 6 weeks. Calvert-Lewin, Thiago, Watkins, and Haaland are great. The problem is essentially the fixtures for someone like a Thiago. I just wouldn't go there right now. Calvert-Lewin is a little bit hot and cold. I would say Ollie Watkins is probably the second best striker right now in FPL behind Haaland, but he's just a bit too expensive. He's 8.5 million still. That's a lot of budget, and it's not just whether you get him in, it's what that stops you from doing in the rest of your team. So for me, it is Haaland. I think you could argue, well, he's double the price of everyone else and getting the same amount of output. But you know what you're getting with Haaland, and he is just that captain option. You're very unlikely to captain a Calvert-Lewin or a Thiago or a Watkins most game weeks, and therefore their value goes down. Whereas if you know you're going to captain Haaland, then that sort of makes him a bit better value. Here we can see Mane and Krupi, who are really overperforming their expected goal involvements, and that would tell me that it's unlikely to keep happening. Chances are that they just will blank. And Wolves' fixtures just aren't great. I think it's just a player that's cheap and again enables you to get in other premiums elsewhere. And if you're using free transfers, swapping between Thiago, Calvert-Lewin, or maybe a Voltemada, Ekitike, Bowen, then I think you're just having someone that you're not expecting as much from, and then you can put that money elsewhere. Is really useful to have in terms of FPL moving forward. So overall, shout out to Fantasy Football Hub. This team rating is 90%. It's not the highest, but considering I've got players who are coming back from injury in it, like Munoz, Bruno Fernandes in there, I'd say it's a pretty good rating. And also, it's something that kind of ignore the rating a little bit because I genuinely really like this team. The value is also under 100 million. So you're looking at this team that I think is pretty good. There are some risks in there, but if you do have some money in the bank, you can upgrade a Pedro Neto. You could upgrade a Mane maybe, or a Krupi if you didn't like the striker setup I've got here. If you've got good team value, I just wanted a team that most people can hopefully afford. So the strengths for me is that it's well balanced. I think saving future transfers by getting in players like Bruno and Munoz now will just really help your flexibility. And being a well balanced team, I can see points coming from everywhere. I wouldn't hesitate to play a 4-5-1 in this upcoming week. Put Mukiele in with Crystal Palace at home. Maybe Munoz isn't ready to play, so you can put Anderson in there as well, leads away, but would expect defensive contributions from him there and put Krupi and Munoz on the bench. I think it's absolutely fine. The weaknesses for me is those returning through injuries. So these players like Munoz, if you get him in on a wild card and then he gets delayed, that could be a potential issue. I also think maybe the forwards are potentially too cheap. And, whilst they're sort of the latest hot property in FPL, are they going to be able to sustain it long term? If I had to pick one, I probably would go with Crew P. I just think Bournemouth are a better team than Wolves. They have reasonably okay fixtures, and there are spaces opening up for Bournemouth attackers to slot in there. So that's the video. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're wildcarding, but also if you've got any free transfer questions for the next few game weeks, pop them in the comments. I'll always get back to you. Please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.